It's the 17th century. This is the period of time that goes from, that's essentially the 1600s, okay? So the 1600s is the 17th century. It falls into the early modern period. So this is the first time we're seeing this term, the early modern period of Europe. And in that continent, whose impact on the world was increasing, was characterized by the Baroque cultural movement, the latter part of the Spanish Golden Age, the Dutch Golden Age, and the French Grand Siècle, or the Great Century, dominated by Louis XIV, the scientific revolution, the world's first public company into megacorporation known as the Dutch East India Company, and according to some historian, the general crisis. Okay, a lot to unpack there. A lot. So Baroque is its own thing, its own sort of world. It's the Baroque is a Western style of architecture, music, dance, painting, sculpture. So it's like a time in art, kind of like Renaissance art. So there's Baroque art. The Spanish Golden Age was a period that coincided with the political rise of the Spanish Empire and the Spanish Habsburgs. And the Dutch Golden Age was a period in history of the Netherlands where there was a lot of trade and scientific developments. As well, we have the scientific revolution, which started its roots, I guess, in the previous century with Galileo Galilei, Tycho Brahe, and Copernicus. Now we have, I guess, more scientific breakthroughs. And this mega corporation, the Dutch East India Company. And as well, this term, the general crisis, which refers to a term used by some historians to describe an alleged period of widespread regional conflict and instability that occurred from the early 17th to the 18th century. I wonder if that has to do with kind of a bigger picture framing of like what was to come. So the World War I, World War II, and modern age, and maybe perhaps the roots of those things are here, maybe. I'm going to click into this, and we'll see. From the mid-17th century, European politics were increasingly dominated by the Kingdom of France of Louis XIV, where royal power was solidified domestically in the Civil War of the Fronde. So these are civil wars within the Kingdom of France in the 17th century. The semi-feudal French nobility was weakened and subjugated to the power of the absolute monarchy. Although the reinvention of the Palace of Versailles from a hunting lodge to a gilded prison in which a greatly expanded royal court could be more easily kept under surveillance. With domestic peace assured, Louis XIV caused the borders of France to expand. It was during this century that the English monarch became increasingly involved in conflicts with the Parliament. This would culminate in the English Civil War and an end to the dominance of the English monarchy. Okay, so the Parliament is something that was probably it is a form of government completely different from the monarchy. I think it has its roots maybe in the Magna Carta that we read about in previous centuries, and now they're coming at odds with one another. Okay. By the end of the century, Europeans were masters of logarithms. Okay, so now we're getting into maths. they were masters of this technology, if you will. Logarithms, electricity, the telescope, the microscope, electricity. This early on? Could it be? Well, it's Wikipedia. Who knows? The telescope and microscope, calculus and universal gravitation, Newton's laws of motion, air pressure, and calculating machines, due to the work of the first scientists of the scientific revolution, including Galileo Galilei, Johannes Kepler, René Descartes, Pierre Fermat, Blaise Pascal, Robert Boyle, Christian Huygens, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, Robert Hooke, Isaac Newton, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. It was also a period of development of culture in general, especially theater, music, visual arts, and philosophy. Some of the greatest inventions took place in this century. It was during this period that European colonization of the Americas began in earnest, including the exploitation of the silver deposits, which resulted in bouts of inflation as wealth was drawn into Europe. Also during this period, there would be more intense European presence in Southeast Asia, such as the colonization of Taiwan. These foreign elements would contribute to a revolution in Ayutthaya, while the Mataram Sultanate and Aceh Sultanate would be major powers of the region, especially during the first half of the century. I do want to pause. It says here that because of the European colonization of the Americas, there was a lot of silver that caused inflation. So I guess there was like so much silver that the value of silver dropped. I think that's what that means. Are we going to be able to finish this in time? Let's try. In the Islamic world, the gunpowder empires, the Ottoman, Safavid, and Mughal, grew in strength as well. The southern half of India would see the decline of the Deccan sultanates and extinction of the Vijayanagara Empire. The Dutch would colonize Ceylon. I don't know where that is. Okay, that's in Sri Lanka. And endure hostilities with the Kandy. The end of the 17th century saw the first major surrender of the Ottoman territory in Europe, when the Treaty of Karelitz seceded most of Hungary to the Habsburg. Okay, interesting. So Ottoman has a foothold in Europe, and this ends here. We still have the Habsburgs, so this is like a relic of like medieval times. In Japan, the Tokugawa established the Tokugai shogunate at the beginning of this century, beginning the Edo period. The isolationist Sakuka policy began in the 1630s and lasted until the 19th century. In China, the collapsing Ming dynasty was challenged by a series of conquests led by the Manchu warlord Nurhaci, which were consolidated by his son Hong Taiji, and finally consummated by his grandson, founder of the Qing dynasty. Okay, I'm just going to skip to this last sentence. The greatest military conflicts of the century were the 30 Years' War, the Dutch-Portuguese War, the Great Turkish War, the 9 Years' War, the Mughal-Safavid Wars, and the Qing annexation of Ming. See you guys on the next one.